Counting Techniques in Probability Part 2, Factorials. In this video, we are going to go over the concept of a factorial very briefly that we can use in the next video, which is going to talk about permutations and combinations. So a factorial, n factorial, that's the notation, n with an exclamation point, is the product of all positive integers up to the given integer n. I think the easiest way to understand factorials is simply through example. So if I have 1 factorial, that's just 1. 2 factorial is 1 times 2, or 2. I will leave it unsimplified. 3 factorial is 1 times 2 times 3, etc. I think you get the idea. I'll do one more. 7 factorial is 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 times 5 times 6 times 7. There is one note. 0 factorial equals 1. I just say 0 factorial is defined to be 1. It makes patterns work and other things that we might do. But let's do some advanced examples of things you might see when you're dealing with factorials. So let's simplify some of these following problems that have factorials in them. What does 8 factorial over 5 factorial simplify to? Now, if you're unsure or if you're just learning, I recommend that you write out the factorial in long form. That is, 8 factorial is 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 times 5 times 6 times 7 times 8. And then 5 factorial is 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 times 5. At this point, we can cancel out like factors in the numerator and denominator, and we're left with 6 times 7 times 8. And that's a perfectly fine number unless you were required to go forward, but that's what calculators are for. And we get 336 if we need an actual final numeric answer. How about 10 factorial over 4 factorial? Well, 10 factorial is the product of all of these positive integers up to 10. And then 4 factorial is all the numbers, all these positive integers multiplied up to 4. And then we can cancel and just see what's left over. And so it's 10 factorial over 4 factorial is 5 times 6 times 7 times 8 times 9 times 10. Now, when you get comfortable with factorials, you don't want to write these things out all the time. You want to go right to the answer if possible. But let's do one more example where we write everything out. What if we have 9 factorial over the whole thing in the denominator, 5 factorial times 4 factorial? Well, let's write these things out. 9 factorial is 1 times 2 times 3 all the way out to 9. And then 5 factorial, we'll multiply these numbers 1 times 2 all the way out to 5. And then we have another 4 factorial, which is 1 times 2 times 3 times 4. So let's start canceling things. The 1 through 5 cancel. We're left with 6 times 7 times 8 times 9 over 1 times 2 times 3 times 4. I'm going to continue to simplify. I know that the 1 doesn't really matter, so I'll get rid of that. And then 2 times 3 is 6. So I'll get rid of that right there. And then 8 over 4 equals 2. So I can replace the 8 over 4 with times 2. And this gives us that 9 factorial over 5 factorial times 4 factorial equals 7 times 9 times 2, which equals, if we needed to multiply it all out, 126. Let's do one final example, and I'll give you just a moment to see if you can do this before me. Hopefully that was enough time to do it, because we don't want to write all these things out. We want to understand how factorials work. I know that essentially 20 factorial is 18 factorial times 19 times 20, right? And then we have 18 factorial in the denominator, leaving us with 19 times 20 as our final unsimplified answer, or 380 as our simplified answer.